King, what are you doing?
Trying to meet you up in Greece, bro. Want to go on that vacay out in Europe. Can't wait to see you.
You're more than welcome to join.
Hey man, we could go the whole way. Germany, Greece, Lithuania, Serbia, wherever, man.
Let's do it.
Wherever. But good afternoon, good morning, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you are, whatever time it is for you right now, Euro time. Just know that you are locked in until the point with the king. You guys find Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, which is hopefully where you're watching us. Click subscribe, please. And if you enjoy it, and if you really do enjoy our content, click that bell so you'd be notified when you see us come up with some content for you. And especially enjoying our fantastic guests, our amazing guests that come on. Please support them as well, okay? Especially today, we have the illustrious, go Wikipedia him, Mr. Sean McCall. How are you doing today, brother?
Doing very well. Thank you for having me on again.
Well, for you, it's night right now.
This evening, yeah.
Yeah. Can you tell the To The Point family, the viewers out there, where they can find you?
Yeah. Mostly, I am more active on Instagram. Sean J McCall is my handle there, and you can find me there. You can also find me on Twitter, but I'm not a big Twitter maniac there. You can pretty much find me and reach me more on Instagram.
Yeah, yeah. I love your reels. They're absolutely amazing. And if you guys are not aware of Sean McCaw is a published author. Yeah, you see his name right there. Okay. He's a former professional player, a current developmental coach, which is absolutely amazing for God knows how many years. I don't want to make you sound old, brother, but he's been doing it for a long time.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely amazing what you're doing out there for the kids out right now, and especially providing to the overall game of basketball in this universe. And Sean is currently in Germany. He
Yes.
played Euroball. So that's why you guys click the thumbnail. Because is it Euro time right
It
now?
is.
Okay. So, Sean, since your illustrious career being spending what over a decade playing professionally in the EuroLeague and nearing a decade of coaching out there in the EuroLeague, I have to ask, and you coming from the States, being born in the States, and
Mhm.
seeing the two different styles of play, because obviously, evidently, they're completely different. Now
Right.
we are seeing, so you have both sides of the spectrum. I only
Right.
have the one. Now that we're seeing them sort of collide, right, into today's NBA, which is what everybody's watching, do you see a major influence from the European style of play? Like they call it the Euro step in the NBA, right? You know, it's just a move. We
Right.
see a lot of European players dominating right now, currently in the NBA.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts on the influence from the European style of play to the NBA? Because before it was kind of a joke in the 80s and 90s.
Right. I mean, I would say that through the influence of the Spurs, drafting Tony Parker, but there was also Dirk Nowitzki with the Mavs, and seeing that these players were no longer soft players. The knock on European players back in the day was that they were soft, and there were a steady influx of European talent coming over to play college ball and then later to play pro ball, and a lot of those guys were not soft. They didn't fit the mold, and so now that kind of unjust label is gone, people are starting to see that these players have a lot of skill, and it's not just about athleticism over here. It's more about skill, teamwork, and these are things that are now becoming in vogue, if you want to call it that, with the with Joker, with a lot of the players that are now overseas, the Greek Freak. They came up in these systems out here where the emphasis wasn't on athleticism. It wasn't on one-on-one. It wasn't on taking 5,000 dribbles before you take a 30-foot three. It was really on the basics of basketball and doing more for your team. And so, of course, I have both sides, yeah, but I've been living in Europe since 28 years, and I definitely am more of a European basketball fan than a NBA fan. That's without question.
Do you see now? So you just said 28 years from your time there, but your time spent in the on this side of the pond, right? Especially in the States with AAU and your collegiate, what you've had to go through over there. Do you have you noticed something about the style of the play with these players? Because you and I, okay, here, let me preface this, because you and I have been around for so long. We've seen Daddy Sabonis, we've seen Peja Stojakovic, like we've seen some of these players come from Europe, right, into the NBA, and they're kind of like shunned, pushed away. But we've noticed now that you see the Giannis's, the Jokers, the Lukas, you know, we've also seen, even in the early 2000s, we've even seen Dirk Nowitzki, right? Especially where I hit you there because you're there. But we've seen some of these players and we've seen it elevate and escalate. Now, what is Europe? Is Europe doing something to show the world about the NBA, or is the NBA finally taking notice and trying to adopt that because the game has become kind of stagnant for them?
I think it's a little bit of a mixture of both. I think over here in Europe, they've been doing pretty much the same thing, the constant work for many years. So it took a while for the NBA to trust the players that were coming over. And once they realized that, hey, these guys can play, it kind of forced the NBA's hand, or American ball period, to change their style and you know, okay, it's not just about the highlights anymore. You know, you want, you know, for me, the NBA is style over substance. It's flash. It's you know, highlight clips. Exactly. And now I think people want to see a different style of ball. They want to see a different way of playing basketball. And I think you mentioned the Euro step. That's a very common step over here that James Harden has kind of adopted into his game and kind of made it his own, you know, a couple of years ago. And ever since then, that's changed the way that trainers are teaching things. But that's been done over here for many years. It's not new, you know. So I think the influence of European basketball is seeping into American culture, which I think is very good. But America will always be dominated by highlights-driven, athletic dunks, things like that, just because it'll always be a little bit more style over substance until you get to the playoffs. I can't watch NBA during the regular season. I can only watch it during the playoffs.
Interesting. That draws me to a question I need to ask you. Do you think it, like, you lived overseas for so long, you were born on this side, so like I said earlier, like I alluded to earlier, you've seen both sides. So from your perspective, from what you see, do you think it's like nowadays on this side of the pond where people got that I guess you could say that instant gratification, like that ADHD, where they just want to see some show, some flash, as opposed to seeing the process and going through it? Do you think that has affected the game?
Oh yeah. I mean, if I'm honest, it's also affected the game over here as well. There is still there social media and just the boom of the internet in general has changed a lot of things. Not just with basketball, but when we talk in basketball terms, yeah, people have a shorter attention span these days. That's proven. So, of course, clips, highlights that are under 7 seconds, you know, that's getting a lot of attention, but you still got to be able to play on the court. And like you said, I know both sides because, I mean, actually, this will tell you a little bit how old I am, but I came over to Europe when I was 22, and I've lived over here 28 years. So I'm about to be 50. So I've lived over here longer than I lived in the States. And so I can definitely see the transition that Europe has made. The coaching is better than when I first got over here. And I'm talking about from European coaches. When I first came over here, there was a huge influence of American coaches over here. Now, I think in the German First League, there's one that I can think of, maybe two. No, there's only one American head coach in the German First League. But back when I first started, there were 6, 7, 8. So the coaching over here has gotten better. They've caught up. And look, Toronto, one of the front runners is a European guy, an Italian guy,
Sergio Scalario.
Exactly. So, and he's paid his dues. He's done it. He's won over here. He's gone to the States. He's been an assistant coach there. He's done it. So
he actually was on Toronto before. Then he left.
Exactly. Exactly. He went back. So he's paid his dues, and he's a really damn good coach. And I actually hope that they hire him because I think it'll be a breath of fresh air, and he'll need some time as a head coach. It's a different way to coach out there, but he's a smart man, and he'll do a good job there, I think.
Now, okay, speaking of that, like that Toronto tie-in over there that you just mentioned, and not just Europe, like internationally, is what I want to talk about. It's we've seen international players from all over the globe in the NBA now. We've seen a surge in how many players are on rosters and their effectiveness. Like we've seen from Africa, we've seen from Canada, like Jamal Murray, shout out, man. I hope you win that. Hope you win that championship this year. Like we've seen from Australia, from we just spoke about Europe. We've seen that. Do you think the NBA, like the American side, might be a little too confined? Because I've noticed when it comes to the media, they don't really want to give these players their dues. Like the top 3 players for the last couple years have been Jokic, Giannis, and Embiid, and Luka, right?
Yeah.
I haven't heard any American names, right? So do you think that they might want to, like, media, from the media standpoint, because I know you have to deal with media as a coach, do you think they might be trying to shun that narrative and try to shut it down?
There's no question.
Huh?
There's no question. No question. In my opinion, Jokic, he should have won the MVP again this year. He didn't win the MVP because of politics. Yes, Embiid had a solid year. Yes, he had a career year. Yes, he played well. I'm not saying he didn't deserve it, but if you look at the body of work, there's no way that they were going to give Jokic 3 MVPs in a row, because that puts him in a very high elite category of players. You're talking about the Michael Jordans. You're talking about, there's a lot of players out there that have never won three MVPs, let alone 3 MVPs in a row. So they just wanted to mix it up. The media did, in my opinion, the voters for MVP. They didn't want it. They didn't want him to win a 3rd consecutive year. But look, you can look no further than the playoffs, how Embiid played, and on top of that, his statement about me and Harden can't do it alone. You would never hear that come out of Jokic's mouth. You know what I'm saying? So I think next year there'll be another European that wins it. I think Giannis will come back hungry next year. I don't see any American that will win it next year. Harden is not going to win it. Curry's not going to win it. KD's not going to win it in Phoenix. LeBron's not going to win it. Who else? Who else is out there from? I think another European will win it. It
not
could be
John Morant, not Jimmy Butler.
Not for the regular season. No, they won't win it. No.
Now that leads me to another question. Sorry, I'm trying to ask you these questions because, like, the viewers out there, like myself, we're not very aware of what it's like to be international. Most of us just sit there all day, right, looking things up, right, making YouTube videos. Hi, but and nobody, like a lot of people have not actually been involved in this. So I want to ask you, do you think there was something along the lines, like now that we've seen the decline of the Americans overall, those south of the 52nd parallel, with their play and how they played as opposed to outside of there and how they've escalated, do you think that might
Mhm.
have something to do with the developmental side when it comes to
Oh,
the American side of the ball, like with the AAU and the other
oh yeah,
prep schools? Here we
most
go.
definitely. I am a huge um, hater, if you will, about
Antagonist.
AAU ball. Antagonist or whatever you want to call it. I hate AAU basketball. I was fortunate enough that when I was in high school, AAU was just kind of starting. There wasn't such a big influence from the shoe companies. It was really about getting these kids to college and nothing else. And I had a great time with AAU. We traveled. It was great. Got seen. But after, I would say, sometime in the early 2000s, things really changed, and it's just a money grab. And coaches are positioning themselves to get college jobs. Nothing wrong with it, but it's at the expense of kids. And that's not developmental basketball. That's a business. And how they do things over here is developmental basketball. And it took a long time for Europeans to catch up, but they've surpassed America in terms of skill level, not athleticism, not money as far as being able to put money into a player, whether they're in college or players hiring individual coaches, things like that. But just basic skill, basic basketball skill. Europeans have surpassed a lot of Americans, not all, for sure not. But
Fundamentals,
yeah,
right?
it's fundamentals, it's teamwork, it's yeah, little things really. And I can talk from Germany because I coached here. The developmental aspect here is huge, and how they get kids into an early age starting basketball and the development, the slow development of players. I can only subscribe to it. And the problem with Europe is, whereas America might have 1,000 really, really good kids, Germany has, for each year, you would say 5. So it's not the sheer number that America has.
So
America
it's
has by
quality over
far
quantity.
numbers. It's no, I would say the quality of certain of those 1,000 from America all across the nation is really good quality. Um, there's quality here as well. It's just not as many numbers, and you have to say that the school system here is not inducive for developing sports talents, because they don't have high school basketball. It's all club basketball,
Mhm.
team basketball, and the it's not ingrained in parents' minds over here to play basketball or play sports in general. It's go to school, get your degree. And that's very dominant here. And for a lot of Americans, for a lot of Americans, it's a way to get out. So they put everything into it. Here, it's more school based.
That's interesting that you say that. For Americans, it's a way out because, in the words of Biggie, you sell crack or have a wicked jump shot, right? To make
Wicked
it
jump
out,
shot. Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And that's interesting because I think the way I see it is like what we've seen. You as a former player, you can enlighten us on this one. I've seen, like, we've all seen it. We can all see it, like you said earlier about social media. We can all see how some of these players act up outside. Like
Oh yeah, yeah,
they're bumping those trap songs, hamma nemma mama nemma, huh, right? And they're
yeah.
wiling up in the club, right? That night before a game, right? And to them, it's like that's their reward for making their way out. That's why Kobe is probably my favorite player because, like he said, growing up in Italy, he was just by himself. So
Mhm.
that's why he put in the work. So do
Yeah.
these players nowadays, like being attracted to that money and that shine and that fame, does that affect them somehow off the court?
Oh
And
yeah.
maybe that's the lackluster style of their play where they're stats padding and just looking for their own and trying to get that big contract instead of taking a pay cut to help build
Yeah,
up.
I mean, look at kids nowadays. They have all these showcases and things like this. This guy, what's his name, Mickey, the high school kid that committed to, where did he commit to? Memphis, and then got busted with on a gun charge or beating up a person or something like that. Now, he's driving around in Lamborghinis. He's in high school.
Yeah.
Come on, come on. There's no way that a kid that is not going to influence a kid that's driving around a Lambo in high school, because they're playing in all these showcases, they're getting money. Now you're allowed NIL deals. I love NIL deals, but it's going to really screw up a lot of things that's going on. I like the fact that these athletes are able to cash in, but how are you going to coach a kid who's making more money than you?
Yeah, it's that arrogance.
How do you coach that kid? I was scraping by in college. I love NILs. I think it has to be a little bit more regulated. But the problem is that these kids are going to get this money, and it's going to make their game suffer. They're not going to be as hungry as any. They're fat. They're getting fed. They're going to school based on the school's ability to give them a $1 million NIL package, but not about school, not about the sport, not about the camaraderie of wanting to go to. I went to Arizona because that was my college. I loved Arizona. I loved Sean Elliott. That's why I went to Arizona, because it was my school. I didn't go to Arizona because I was getting $1 million.
And you had a great roommate.
And I had a great roommate. Yeah, mighty mouse. But so I think the objectives or the reason why kids are doing things now has changed. And that's what you don't have over here. You don't have NILs. You don't have. So these kids here they're fighting to play on the first team when they're 16 years old. They're trying to be a professional when they're 16 years old. They're trying to get a contract with the first team when they're 16 years old. They're playing with men. They're playing with 30-year-old men when they're 16 years old. And that's a big difference as well. But going back to the NILs and everything like that, I think the NILs are great. I think it's good for basketball. I think it's good for college basketball because kids will stay in college longer, because some of these kids are not ready to turn pro, but because they're making more money in college than they would signing a rookie minimum, they stay in college. That's good for college basketball. But in the end, I think the game will suffer somewhat because how hungry are these kids when they're getting $1-2 million? How hungry are they?
Woo. Words from Shanstradamus. Oh my God. See, okay, before we head out of here, I got one last pressing question for you. It's off script. I didn't tell you about this earlier, but
Okay.
You being out in Europe for so long, and especially in a country which has a notorious past for prejudicial issues,
Yes.
and being on a continent that can be seen as kind of prejudicial in some areas.
Yes.
What was it like for you as a young American Black man to be playing the sport out there? Do you think you were automatically accepted because you were carrying a team, like helping a team? Or do you think, like, did you have to earn it? Did you have to, like, what was your process? Like, did you feel shunned? Did you have to like shy away? Like, how was it for you out there?
It was
I'm
very,
coming out to
very
Europe, so
normal.
I want to know what it's like for me as a brown guy going out there.
No, it's very normal. I never really had any problems out here.
Awesome.
I think I would consider we are as Black men, we are somewhat of a rarity, depending on where you're living. But in general, I've never had any problems. And if anything, I was well accepted because of the fact that I was a fan favorite. sometimes I joke around and say I was like the house Negro. You know, I could speak German. I was a good athlete. I was respectful. A lot of people gravitated towards me. And
Articulate.
in that sense, it was maybe easier for me than an African guy going to school here. My picture's in the paper. You know, I'm doing interviews, things like that. So it was maybe a lot easier for me than a normal African guy living here and going to college and doing that kind of thing. But I think it's like that anywhere, even NBA guys. You know, so I've never really had any problems over here. I can say honestly, I've had less problems in the 28 years that I've lived here than the 22 years I lived in the States, as far as racial things go.
Okay, kind of curious because I'd like to clear that up because people do ask, and you're the expert.
Yeah,
You're out there.
it's a valid question.
Right? It's just something that would make you think, right? Especially with the climate of the world today, right? And you know the way people look at each other and think of each other based on whatever their skin color is or their religion, like, you know what I mean? Like their sexual orientation. You know, people judge and people assume, and sometimes people are, like we were talking about earlier, people are still stuck in the old ways, right? That they can't accept the new. Now, looking at the time here, Sean, I got one last question for you, brother.
Got you.
Who do you got to win the finals? Since you say you're watching the playoffs now.
It comes on at 2:30 in the morning my time, so I'll be up watching. My heart wants Butler to win a championship. He's earned it, I think. He's put his dues in, but Miami doesn't have anybody to defend Jokic.
Bingo.
That's the key. I think all other areas of the game, they're pretty well matched, but the difference is going to be Jokic, and I don't see Bam guarding him effectively. It's going to have to be a team effort, but of course, then they've got a lot of shooters that Jokic can pick apart and find a defense. He can pick apart a defense. So I think Miami will make it interesting. I'm going with Denver in 6.
I agree with you 100%. And you have no bias because he's European, right? You have no bias.
No. I actually hope I'm wrong, and I actually hope Miami wins because I like the Miami organization, how it's run, and I think Jimmy Butler he's a great dude, and he deserves it.
I think he does deserve it. I think they both do deserve it.
Both teams deserve it. Both teams definitely deserve it. But my heart hopes Jimmy wins it, but my basketball brain says they can stop Jokic.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with you 100%. I'm totally on the same page with you. And speaking of the same page, you guys go out there. Sean, where can they find the book?
We can find it on Amazon, same name, different game, written by Sean J. McCall. You can find it on my website, seanjmccall.com. If you buy it from my website, I would send it to you with a signed dedication. And you can find me on Instagram. I am in total control of my Instagram page. So if you hit me up, I will personally get back to you. And signed autograph right there.
Yeah.
Signed dedication.
Make sure you guys go check that out. Please do that. Great read. Sean, and if you guys want to find me, I don't know, I'm kind of still here. I don't know, at King on Instagram. You guys know what to do. To the point, baby. Right? Hopefully we'll see Skip soon. You guys out there, the viewers, I consider you guys To The Point family. Thank you for your subscriptions. Thank you for watching. Thank you for your views. Shout out to my man Arturas. I know I didn't say you. I know Art. You're out there in Europe. You should be watching. You should be on here, but you're watching the game. Hope your team wins out there in Lithuania. Sean, thank you so much for spending your time with us and enjoying this time with us. And
always.
Hey, brother, you know it's all love. So I don't know what else to say other than good afternoon, good evening, good night, and peace.